When it came to school lunch, pizza was always my favorite. This is my grain-free replica of a classic school lunch. As I build this, we're going to peel back the layers of school lunch history. It's way more intricate, way more complex than just a tray of food. From a matter of national security to the budget cuts that changed everything. When I found out school lunches had been fast foodified in the 1990s, I had to look into it a little bit deeper, and I found a fascinating history. School lunches became more processed as we got into the 90s and into the 2000s, but my personal journey took a different turn. With my Crohn's diagnosis, I turned more towards whole foods and unprocessed foods and foods I made myself. That is why the focaccia pizza I'm making today, one of my oldest recipes, is grain-free and made with almond flour. Come along with me while we make the pizza and talk about the complex history of the United States school lunch. This grain-free focaccia bread is one of the first recipes I ever posted. And a few people have written to me saying it's one of their favorites, their favorite way to make pizza. So I thought this was the perfect time to revisit this and make this for my school lunch. Here's my ingredients for my focaccia. I got 2 cups of almond flour, 3 eggs, 1 cup of dripped yogurt. I've got 1 cup of cheese here that I freshly grated. Got some Parmesan, some sharp cheddar, and then some aged mozzarella. Now I've got 3 tablespoons of olive oil. This is a little bit of a change from my original recipe. I used butter. You could use either one. I think olive oil will be nice here. I've got a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar, and then my spices and baking soda. So I've got 1 teaspoon of baking soda, half teaspoon of salt, 1/4 teaspoon of pepper, and a half teaspoon of ground oregano. In the original recipe, I used cilantro. You can use whatever herbs you like. I have my 2 cups of almond flour here. I'm just going to stir in my baking soda and my spices and then set this aside. Now I'm going to do my wet ingredients. Originally, when I made this, the first time I made this recipe years ago, I used the loose packed dry curd cottage cheese. So I did this in a blender or food processor you could use too, because that tended to be gritty and I wanted to get it very smooth. The yogurt doesn't have that problem. So I'm just going to use an electric mixer here. You could also use farmer's cheese here. I can't find any near me. I haven't seen the dry curd cottage cheese in the store for years, so I am using yogurt. And then I'm going to add my 3 eggs, my apple cider vinegar, and my olive oil. I'm going to blend this until it's nice and smooth. I guess I should have said I'm going to beat this until it's nice and smooth, but you can see that it's all blended and smooth in texture. Now we just add our wet mixture to the dry mixture and to beat this until it's completely combined. All right, and now we have a batter. Next step is to stir in the cheese. I realized as I was going over this recipe, I haven't made this in a very long time, and I realized how similar it is to my bagel recipe, which also uses a combination of farmer's cheese or dripped yogurt and cheese as the base to get the right texture. The main difference in that is that I heat the cheeses together instead of stirring it in like this. So this is going to be interesting to see a difference. There's a little less almond flour in this because we want it to be a little lighter and more airy. So just gonna let this sit here for a second while I get my pan ready. All right, I've got my pan lightly greased with some avocado oil, and now I'm going to pour in my batter. So this is going to be a thick crust. You could put it in a bigger pan if you want it to be a little thinner, but we also want it to be like focaccia bread. So we're going to do it like this. It's not going to be like all with the air bubbles and stuff like regular focaccia, but it actually has a very nice texture to it from what I remember. Like I said, it's been a very long time since I made this. I'm just gonna spread this out evenly as I can. So you can see there, it's pretty thick. When I'm making it just as a bread, as like a flatbread, I do sprinkle cheese on top, but I'm not going to do that here because we're going to have cheese on the pizza, and there's already cheese in here. We don't want, like, that's just a lot of cheese. So I'm just going to put it in the oven like this. I'm going to bake this for 35 to 40 minutes. While our crust bakes, we have time to dive deeper into where school lunch started and where it's gone. School lunch goes back to the late 19th century, the late 1800s, when more kids were going to school. Lunches started to be served at schools so that kids would have something to eat. These programs were not government programs. They were usually local groups, local charity, local private groups, local women's groups who wanted to use school lunches as a way to teach home economics and nutrition to kids. And there was people who back then even started talking about that kids who went to school hungry did not learn as well. Still a conversation that we have today. So let's take a look at how that played out until today. Most of these programs existed in bigger cities like in Philadelphia, New York, and Boston, and they increased as education became compulsory, which happened state by state. There wasn't a standard time that it happened for everybody. So as more kids went to school, there became more of a need to provide lunch for them. By around the time of World War One, there was rationing during World War One, and there was more increased local government involvement in schools, which is when things started to get complicated. But where it really started to get more complicated was during the Great Depression, and that is when the federal government got involved in school lunch. So there were a few different things going on during the Great Depression. A lot of people were hungry because they couldn't afford to buy food, and kids were hungry at school. But in the agricultural world, the farming world, there was a huge surplus of food because the food was still being produced, but nobody was buying it because they couldn't afford it. So they were throwing food away. After Roosevelt became president, there was a lot of criticism for throwing food away. Well, there's so many people who were hungry. So he came up with a program to buy the excess surplus food from farmers and provide that to food pantries and to schools. So that was a great thing, obviously, for people who were hungry and kids who may have been their only meal of the day. But it wasn't designed around nutrition. It was designed to use up this excess food, which meant maybe not a huge variety and really not a focus on nutrition, but just getting, focus on calories, focus on getting kids food, which of course was very necessary at the time. But it could lead to some very strange, they had to come up with school lunches that could feed everybody and use this food. So you get a lot of vegetable soups. There was lots of vegetables and meat. So you got lots of soups and stews and bread and some simple sandwiches. And tomato peanut butter soup like the one that Max Miller made over on his channel from Depression era recipe. As we moved into World War II era, school lunch became very important for a couple of reasons. Started looking at nutrition a little bit more because not necessarily for the benefit of everybody, but for the benefit of the country. The U.S. wanted to be, at the forefront of healthy children around, known as the country with the healthiest children in the world. They also wanted healthy children that would be healthy enough to go fight in a war or work in the war effort back home. So they needed healthy people, strong people, not malnourished people. So school lunches became very important then, and so that getting the kids enough food during the day during a time of war rationing. So school lunches became important, and they started focusing a little more on nutrition back during World War II, which led to post-World War II in 1946. Harry Truman established the National School Lunch Act. So that act established the National School Lunch Program, which was aimed at providing access to school lunches through children across the country. These also, they wanted to focus on some basic nutrition requirements with protein, calories, and vitamins and minerals. So Truman said, "No nation is any healthier than its children, nor more prosperous than its farmers." So that's an important concept because that shapes school lunches from then on, because what department is in charge of the National School Lunch Program? It's the Department of Agriculture. It's not the Department of Education. It's not the FDA. It is the Department of Agriculture and their interests. So why is that important? It's the interests beyond just feeding kids that come into play from then until now. They're still the ones that administer it. And as we rolled into the 50s and into the 60s, school lunch got tied up in lots of different things, including segregation in schools and civil rights and economics and special interest group. And I am not going to go into the weeds on this. I will put some links down below, or you can read more about this. It's quite fascinating when you read all the different things that went on with school lunches and society. It's mind-boggling. You don't even think about it. You just kind of take school lunch for granted. But there's so much going on behind the scenes that we don't even know. While there was a kind of a focus on nutrition in that early part of the program, as time went on and money became more constrained, there was more kids in school. Schools didn't have adequate staff or equipment to make these lunches, which they were making at school. So what happened as we progress into the 80s, which is my time when I have my school lunch that I'm making now, there started to be budget cuts, and there started to be a different look at, like, well, we don't need to give these kids, we're giving them too much food, so we're going to make cutbacks in the requirements. And that was like literally like 10 french fries to 6 french fries, a 2-ounce burger to 1.5-ounce burger, and you can add soy to the burger. And one of the biggest ones of that is where we got our ketchup is a vegetable. Now, they got a lot of backlash for this, but that didn't change how school lunches were administered. So what happened? Schools were struggling to feed kids. They raised the prices of school lunch, which were supposed to be just to cover the costs of producing them. Kids couldn't afford it. Parents didn't want to pay. They didn't like what they were getting. So this brought in vendors that could make prepackaged foods that could just be easily reheated, kept in a big refrigerator. They would provide the refrigeration and the heating method. And so schools, they were entering in a partnership with the schools, and they were branded. So it's like, kids want this stuff, so they're going to buy it outside. That was the benefit for the vendors. And some of them would be manufacturers, some of them would be fast food chains. And so that is where school lunch very much changed, because the nutrition requirements were kind of falling to the wayside. Healthy choices were not being focused on. Kids were not getting educated. Like, the original idea of the whole school lunch was to educate kids on nutrition. Now it has become a commodity and has become part of business. I didn't see any of those things when I was in school. I still kind of had the standard lunch, although when I got to high school or even middle school, you could just get a thing of french fries if you wanted. They didn't have any requirements for what we ate. They just had food there, and you could take a full lunch. Like I said, you could just take a tray of french fries. You could take a burger and fries every day. And in high school, it was the same, and they had some different things. My high school had a salad bar, which is what I like to have for lunch. But they also just they had the hamburger line and then the regular school lunch line. But things were starting to get a little more manufactured when I was in school. But into the 90s, that's how old I am, into the 90s, that is when the prepackaged food started to get into a lot of schools, not all. And there was a huge disparity in the quality of food depending on your location now, because schools were struggling to get enough food for everybody. And so schools in more wealthy areas where the taxes were contributing more could get more food. and other schools struggled to get enough food. And so the quality was quite varying. So as we moved into closer to the 21st century and into the 21st century that we are in now, there started to be more of thoughts about nutrition and education, and also moving towards a more diverse landscape of food that helps our overall health, but it also acknowledges different cultural foods. For a long time in the school lunch system, because it was kind of, we're going to establish a standard American lunch, which was often lacking some flavor because they didn't want to choose spices that were any particular way, and they were worried about kids not liking spicy foods. They also moved away from a lot of cultural foods because they wanted a kind of a homogenized American lunch. So you would get you get the pizza or the tacos or whatever, but you weren't exploring too much. Now there is more thoughts about that, and some schools do offer much more variety and have the kids try different foods from different cultures. Some schools have gardens where they talk about growing your own vegetables and eating vegetables. And some schools have a lot of variety in their school lunch, but not all of them. There is still a lot of disparity, and I'm not going to get political here. There's a lot of different thoughts on public funds for school lunches, but I'm just giving an overview, and I do invite you to look into this for yourself a little bit more. Like I said, it's quite fascinating. So let's put our pizza together, get our crust out of the oven, and put our pizza together. All right, I have it out of the oven. It's actually for the second time. You can see I already cut it a little bit, but it was a little bit wet on the inside, so I decided to cook it a little bit longer. So it needed the full 40 minutes. And I'm just going to do a small pizza because I'm just going to put cheese on it, because the pizzas I had at school only ever had cheese, and I'm going to save the rest for a more robust pizza later. For my sauce, I'm just going to use a little bit of tomato sauce. So I got a tomato sauce that has no added ingredients. You could also make your own. This is a little easier, so it's going to run a little bit since I'm not making a full pizza. And to that, I'm going to add some salt, some pepper, some more oregano for a little flavor, and my mozzarella. So mozzarella, aged mozzarella, is actually pizza cheese. A lot of people think of it as that fresh mozzarella that you can get. That is generally used for like a caprese salad, or like a margarita pizza, we'll use that. But regular pizza cheese is actually the aged mozzarella. I'm going to put this in the oven at about 400 for about 7 to 10 minutes. So I got my pizza out of the oven onto my school lunch tray. So I have my pizza, my focaccia pizza, a salad, some oranges, some almond milk, and a almond butter blondie. So my school lunch probably would have replaced the salad with tater tots, or what they called garlic bread, which was just a regular piece of bread with some melted butter and some garlic powder on it. But I'm going for the salad. I think that goes well with pizza. Let's try our cheese pizza. So that is really good. I am remembering now why this was a favorite and why I've had some people writing to me about it. Definitely, it's a thicker crust, but it holds together well. It has a nice flavor, and it's not too dense, and it's not soggy either. Let me try to give you a little bit. You can see the crumb there. It's just a very nice crust. It doesn't taste almond floury, and that's what I really like about it, because I don't usually like almond flour crusts for pizza because they get a little soggy, but this one is really good. So I'm so glad I revisited this one. Definitely doesn't have to be just used for a lunch. Add more toppings, make it more robust, add your favorite flavors. It's a great crust. Let me know in the comments, did you find anything surprising about the history of school lunch? And tell me, what was your favorite school lunch when you were growing up? Thanks so much for watching and giving me your time. Give this a like if you enjoyed this and learned something, and I will see you in the next one.